Hello, this is Real Longacre here with my co-host Brett House for Signal and Noise Podcasts. And this week we have a special edition. We're coming at you live from AdWeek 2025 in New York City. Lots of people here, I think 20,000. I read that earlier today. It's a packed house. We're having a good time with a lot of great conversations, including with our special guest here, Johnathan Barnes. Johnathan, really excited to have you talk to our viewers here. Maybe you can spend a couple seconds, introduce yourself, and tell our viewers about who you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. My name is Johnathan Barnes. I'm a founder and CEO of a company called Population Science. In short, we help organizations reduce ad fraud so they can put more money towards working media.
Earlier today, we were talking a little bit about a couple topics. One was curation, and the other was outcomes. I know that's been a big buzzword this year. Kind of won't go away. Love to hear what you're thinking, what you're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in the space, and I think both of these buzzwords, I've kind of been curious why we care about those things now, because they've been around for so long. And I think what's different now is we actually have the tools at our fingertips to take control and curate quality inventory. There's a wide array of publisher analytics tools. DSPs, SSPs have become more advanced with the solutions that they're able to provide. AI, buzzword of all buzzwords, is definitely doing a lot of interesting things in the space. So I think you kind of put all those things together, and while we've talked about these things for a long time, I mean, the time is now to be able to really curate and build really an end-to-end stack, whether you're media buying in-house, at an agency, or however you're doing it, you can finally do these things.
And are we talking about outcomes a lot because of ad fraud and some of the concerns around transparency in the media ecosystem, and whether or not there's, players in the space that are doing things that are stealing impressions that aren't really driving outcomes? Do you think that's a big driver of why outcomes-based marketing is the big meme of the year?
Well, I think it's all of the above. I mean, again, obviously, I'm very passionate about ad fraud, and that's definitely a big part of it. But I think it's just signal in general. I mean, there's billions of impressions going through every day. I won't even get into the transaction ID debate that's going on. It's a whole other topic. Go to pre-bid next week if you want to learn more about that. But I think it's just people are tired of being sold in this industry, and they want to now have the ability to take control themselves and learn for themselves what's quality signal, whether that's rooting out ad fraud, whether it's data efficacy, data activation strategies. I mean, you name it. Again, the tools are there that you have the ability to take control now. So I urge everyone in the space to just do it. Just get out there and do it.
Thanks, Jonathan. Love it. Thanks for coming. And by the way, love the hat.
Thanks.
Hello, Alyssa. Great to see you here. Thanks for joining. Why don't we start by you telling our audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Alyssa Furth. I lead ad tech at Credera, which is Omnicom's digital transformation consultancy. So focusing on helping brands bring together MarTech and ad tech and really think through how they can leverage their tech stack to drive more connectivity, transparency, and performance with their media.
Yeah, we were talking offline about data collaboration and data activation, and how first-party data, while it's not all that you need, because it's oftentimes not differentiated from brand to brand, brands are not necessarily doing that, the activation of their first-party data across the digital ecosystem effectively, right? Where do you think the blockers are, the friction is, in at least taking that first baby step to sort of data activation before you start to bring in other data sources for sort of increased signal?
Yeah, I mean, I think at first it's, do you have all your data together and in the right place? Do you really understand what first-party data you have and the value of it and how you can use it? And I think, secondarily, it's how do I actually get it from my internal ecosystem into a paid media environment? And then when I do that, how do I actually prove that it's driving any outcomes? And so that closed loop is really what's missing. I think CDPs play an important role, but data clean rooms also play a really important role in that, because they provide that ability, that intelligence layer. It's almost like a portal, right? For you to send your first party data out. Well, not really even send it out, right? But activate your first party data and then get that measurement back in. So it's less of a black box and you can create more transparency with your paid media.
You mentioned data clean rooms. I remember a few years ago, they were like the hottest topic. You went to Cannes, it was everywhere. It was like data clean rooms. Everyone had their own data clean rooms. And then I think adoption maybe didn't live up to expectations. I don't know how much of it was hype. And I know you've worked in the space for several years. Where do you see the state of the industry in terms of data clean rooms? Are they being adopted? Are they not being adopted? Where are we? And where do you think we're going to go?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, I think that brands have been experimenting with data clean rooms over the last couple of years. They've been treating it almost like science projects, right? And I'm going to test out media clean rooms, maybe use a neutral clean room. I think adoption's been really hard because it's not just the tech that's complicated, but actually the people and the workflows around it. How do I get my IT, legal, and marketing teams all to collaborate together and really understand the true value and create business cases around it? So that's been a really tough challenge for adoption, as is agencies in figuring out, how are they going to use data clean rooms? And then what is the role of agency versus marketer in data clean rooms? But as we see brands place more value on first party data, on measurement and transparency, and also their AI agendas, we need to start to move from a place of science projects and testing into making data clean rooms actually a strategic infrastructure investment so that you can build a really robust data ecosystem that includes both first and second party signals.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. Appreciate your time.
We've got Tim Rowe, the editor from State of Streaming. Thrilled to have you. Thanks for stopping by. This was sort of a serendipitous encounter at Advertising Week, which happens.
It sure does.
Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at State of Streaming.
Absolutely. So about 5-6 years ago, started a podcast all about billboards, actually, that has morphed and migrated into all things streaming TV, understanding that the challenges facing out of home is really what is facing streaming at large. So that focus has shifted to all streaming news on stateofstreaming.com.
Nice. So at Media Radar, we're focusing certainly a lot on the rapidly growing sort of video everywhere advertising ecosystem, the CTV advertising ecosystem. It's a big topic at Advertising Week. It's a big topic across the publisher and advertiser ecosystem in general. What do you think is really driving a lot of that shift? I mean, we've seen a lot of move towards user-generated content, the creator economy versus the Hollywood economy from originally produced content, and a huge shift over the last 5 to 7 years. That's really showing a domination of the content ecosystem aligned to UGC. How do you think that's driving some of the changes in the streaming and video everywhere advertising ecosystem and advertisers in general? How do they actually understand that and take advantage of that sort of change in consumer behavior towards UGC?
I think it's evidence of what we always knew to be true, that the consumer has control and the unreasonable consumer isn't going to go back. We got used to free one-day shipping and having our content the way we like it on demand and the platforms that we like to watch it on. A few years ago, as I was watching my son kind of as a young student navigating COVID and lockdowns and things like that, I noticed he's watching YouTube on the living room TV all day long. And I started to ask him, like, are you watching YouTube? What are you doing? And he said, I'm watching TV. And it kind of clicked then. That was 5 or 6 years ago. This is just the way that his generation is going to watch TV. And I think the same can be said for us and how we want to consume content. So UGC, sports on demand, it's really the way that we want to consume media, and now the market having to respond to that.
I think out of home over the years has kind of been overlooked or neglected. How does the shift to digital out of home kind of, I think, integrate it with the rest of advertising, really create closed loop in terms of experiences, data reporting? Can you maybe comment on that a little bit?
I think what's interesting is I think that 25 years of display has built a tolerance for maybe things that aren't perfectly measured or perfectly targeted, and understanding now the fraud risk, how much of my ad budget is actually being absorbed by things that aren't humans. I can reallocate that budget to digital out of home. I can suddenly increase my incremental reach with real humans, people that can buy my products or services. So integrating digital out of home into the media plan is that next natural transition, I think, from display to something that's a larger format, offering similar unit economics, but with bigger impact and reach.
That's awesome. Thanks for coming, Tim. Really appreciate it, and good seeing you.
Thanks for having me.
We are privileged to have Scott Messer, the founder and principal of Messer Media, who's very well known in the ad space. And Scott, I've looked a lot at your LinkedIn post. I saw your presentation at the Ad Monster Sell-Side Summit. You really established the fact that publishers have a problem. There's a monetization problem, there's a content problem, there's an LLM problem, but you really laid this out in sort of three core principles. Sort of admit that you've got a problem first in order to solve against this challenge that the ecosystem is facing. Can you talk a little bit about that for folks, our audience that hasn't seen this presentation, hasn't seen your post on LinkedIn, what that looks like, those three kind of core principles, and what your solutions are for publishers going forward?
Absolutely. So to set the stage a little bit, when I was on stage at Ad Monsters in Nashville, I was the co-host of the event. I practice something that I call ad tech therapy. It's a service that we provide inside Messer Media. It is rehabilitating your revenue and fixing your problems so that you can get back to crushing your goals. And part of therapy is sort of going through the processes of grief. And one of the first ones is denial. And as I was thinking about what I'm going to do for my kicking off speech for this conference, is thinking about getting publishers to the right place mentally so that we can have productive conversations. And part of that is like letting go of the past a little bit. So I laid out three basic premises for them. The first is that programmatic is broken and it simply cannot be unbroken. The second part is that the open internet has stalled out from a growth standpoint. Where there was $70 billion going into the market in like 2015, 2018, 2019, there's $80 billion going into the open auction now. And that is a tiny fraction of growth compared to the rest of digital media expenditures went from like $100 billion up to $400 or $600 billion, depending how you do the math. So while everything else is 4x, the digital web has grown by less than 10% or 12%. That's bad. And I'll talk about why in a little bit. And then the third part is that LLMs have devoured the long tail of content, and that is gone. So the content that of yesterday has been consumed, and publishers need to think about where we go next from a content perspective. So as you think about these three things, what I told publishers to do is you must push for transparency in programmatic. We need to get a better system for advertising. Otherwise, the money is going to move elsewhere. And you're seeing things like this with the Trade Desk's move to open ads recently, the fiasco with transaction IDs, and so on and so forth with the open web. We don't compete against each other as publishers. We compete against the walled gardens. And we have to get our collective shit together to fix that. Similarly, when you think about like the performance of the open web, my greatest fear is that advertisers simply take their money and leave. And if performance is broken, why would an advertiser want to spend money in the open auction? If it continues to get smaller and smaller, it's going to be an unviable place for them to spend money. And that's bad for journalism and creators overall. And then when you combine that with the fact that LLMs are starting to shrink the amount of traffic that's going on, you're getting to a smaller and smaller world to the point where there's going to be nothing left. And I fear that the budgets that the LLMs are going to take as they move into advertising, because OpenAI and Perplexity will move into advertising very soon, the money of where those budgets are coming from isn't like a new search budget. It's going to come from open web display. It's a comparable experience, maybe a little bit coming out of search, but predominantly from open web display. And that is going to be the final nail in the coffin for the open web monetization ecosystem. That's bad. So I need everyone to get up to the starting point of like, here we are, programmatic's in a bad place. The open web is having performance issues and we're having a serious traffic issue. Okay, now that we agree upon that, can we start finding solutions and move forward?
Scott, this is Rio. I love that. It's been a tough couple decades for publishers. They've really struggled. Monetization has fallen quite a bit, and I think it continues to collapse, especially some publishers. What would be your kind of advice for them to, besides calling the ad tech therapist, what would be your advice to them in order to?
Well, when you do call the ad tech therapist, this will be your advice that you get, and it's free for you guys today. So, firstly, even though yesterday's content was stolen, we have tomorrow's content to fight for. So think about that you have a future and it's worth protecting. which means establishing baselines with LLMs and how you want your content to be handled. Are you blocking bots? Are you setting up frameworks and marketplaces so you can actually license your content? You have to be business ready. These publishers are in the business of giving information and giving answers. And whether you're giving that directly to an LLM or directly to a user, you need to have a business model and the frameworks for monetization. So get those things set up and then work on content format innovation. A media company's job is three things: produce, distribute, and monetize IP. And then you keep running this thing around like a flywheel where the monetization keeps funding content. Your website is not your IP. That is a distribution channel and a monetization place. You must have more places to put your content. So start innovating content formats and move beyond your web and start building your brand and going to meeting the consumers where they are. And that might mean going back into the walled gardens and going into other locations like podcasts.
Thanks, Scott. Great having you here.
Always a pleasure, Rio. Thank you very much.
Go.
Krish Raja, who is coming to us all the way from Australia, I believe. All right, Melbourne?
From Sydney.
From Sydney,
Yeah.
Sydney, Australia. And you've got we've talked, before, you've got some really good thoughts on publisher monetization and on the importance of owning data and how critical that is to publishers' sort of content strategies and ability to better monetize their data. And we'd love to hear what you have to think.
Yeah.
It's a topic we love. Yeah.
I've been in the publishing monetization space for a long time, more than 15 years. Publishers directly at ad tech providers, MarTech, and now I run advisory in Gen AI and data for content businesses. And yeah, look, I think the thoughts have roughly followed a similar thread throughout those years, which is that publishers want people to come to their properties. And in an AI world, there are more threats of disintermediation and being removed from your customer. And so I believe that at the core, first-party data is important. First-party data is your signal, your understanding that you know your customer. And in the years gone by, all we've had to be able to do that is an email address. Someone types their email in, you capture their email, and that's your main one-to-one mechanism. That's not necessarily the future of how we monetize in open web publishing. Certainly, we've always found it a little bit difficult to turn email addresses unless we're monetizing it in, matching it in Facebook. We've always had to find a bit of a difficulty to get the scale we want, to get the level of sophistication we want when we're running email address matching. And so, yeah, look, I think first-party data is the critical juncture to embedding a good AI-led monetization strategy. I think AI minus data equals risk. It equals hallucination. It includes potential disintermediation from your customers. And so I'm a big proponent of first-party data.
What about third-party data? Where does that fit in, Krish?
I think it's very relevant. I think that you need to have information from other businesses and their customers or other data sources in order to enrich and scale your data set. Your data set is unlikely to contain all your customers. And if it does, it's unlikely to know everything there is to know about that customer. And so absolutely, I think third-party data is really critical. I just don't think it will be the only strategy in the future, which it kind of has been for a little while. It's been the main event for a lot of monetization.
And should pubs be afraid of AI or embracing AI, or maybe both? What do you think?
Both. I think a bit of fear is healthy. I think you have to, as a non-AI native business, it's important to take this seriously. AI is not a fad, and it's not going away. I think we all agree on that. So I think a little bit of healthy kind of sit up and go, okay, well, this is a big deal. We've got to take this seriously. But optimism, for sure. Who has more access to loyal customers? Who has access to content and proprietary content that is able to be amplified with AI? The big content businesses. So if they nail their USP and apply AI in strategically correct areas for their business, it's going to be a game changer for them.
Thank you. Excited to have Alexis Hochleutner on our podcast. Alexis, welcome. Maybe you can start off telling our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I run my own consultancy now. Have worked at the walled gardens, Google, Facebook, Amazon, working to help figure out how we can get advertisers to better understand how to optimize their media dollars with tech capabilities. And now I'm off on my own running Arc Digital and currently running a supply path optimization study on behalf of Google, OpenX, and Basis, run by the 614 group at the Brand Safety Summit.
Alexis, I love the fact that you came to this industry from financial services initially, which I thought was so interesting. Maybe you could tell our viewers a little bit about how, when you came into this industry, from financial services, which is typically regulated, and when you came into advertising and ad tech, you were a little, say, surprised when you found out there were so few standards or regulations.
So when you think about it, the stock market and the advertising markets are similar in that they're both auction-based, but really it stops there. If you think about the regulations, when you buy a stock or sell a stock, you know who's on the other side of the trade. Regulations like know your customer and DTC, like clearing houses, there's a clearing agent who tells you what stock you bought, at what price and when. That's absolutely not the way that the programmatic ecosystem works. The way there's multiple intermediaries, tons of reselling of inventory, hidden costs, hidden intermediaries. So really, you don't know where your media dollars are going. And sometimes those media dollars are going to fraudulent or really poor quality publishers. Some who are the buzzword of last year was Emet.
Yeah, lots of standards, but not enough enforcement and regulation is what we talked about before this episode. Tell us a little bit about the study that you're putting together around supply chain optimization and transparency, because I know you have a lot of interesting thoughts on how that can be improved to kind of match some of the more regulated industries that just have less friction, right, and more transparency built in.
Exactly. So one of the big problems that the ANA basically ran a study in 2024 on programmatic advertising, and they realized that they basically interviewed advertisers who all said they didn't have enough information to be dangerous when it comes to understanding and making decisions about their supply path. And that's kind of what this study is aiming to do, is how can, these sponsors, Google, OpenX, and Basis, they want to learn, what do advertisers care about when it comes to their supply paths, and how can they surface that data in a meaningful way. If you think about it, everybody wanted access to log level data, and then it was really hard to harness that data and do anything really interesting or insightful with it. So
be careful what you ask for.
Exactly. So really, that's the goal of the study, is to understand what it is that advertisers do, and then help to kind of understand what do we have today from our tech platforms, and what do they need to build, and help them to validate their roadmaps.
That's great. Thank you for joining us.
We've got one of my favorite guests, Shiv Gupta from U of Digital. Shiv, welcome. Great to see you again. As always, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Shiv. Thanks for having me on. I have been in ad tech for a long time. Started my career at AOL, was there for about 10 years, was at Credera, mostly in sales and sales leadership type of roles. Now I run a company called U of Digital. We provide training for the marketing and advertising industry. We train on tech. We train on the zeitgeist. We train buyers and sellers. And obviously we train on AI, because that's what everybody needs to learn about right now.
Awesome. So you mentioned AI enablement, and U of Digital is at the forefront of this. I know that's a lot of what you're doing. I'd love if you could maybe talk to our audience about the state of AI enablement, big companies versus small companies, impact on workers. What's going on in this space, Shiv?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, obviously, AI from a product perspective is moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. Companies are, ChatGPT and OpenAI is shipping speed is insane. Every week they're putting out product. And naturally, that means a lot of people are falling behind, right? They can't keep up with everything. They don't understand all the innovation. They don't understand the use cases, et cetera. So we're seeing that everywhere. It's rampant. People are struggling to keep up, and a lot of companies are not providing structured ways for their people to keep up. And it's actually interesting. Some of the most foremost AI companies, the big tech companies, are not providing the tools that their people need to keep up, which I find to be fascinating. And I think the companies that will do a better job of that, either internally or through providers like us, will leap ahead, right? Because everyone's shipping product, but if you can bring your people along for the ride, the people need to be the ones using it.
Fair to say people are the bottleneck? Is that it?
I think that's accurate. Yeah. Listen, there's probably other bottlenecks. My personal
what I see and what I do is try to undo the bottleneck around people, and people are a massive bottleneck right now to AI adoption, to AI kind of like speed to market for companies in all sorts of ways.
When you're looking at AI adoption, is it impacting jobs? Is eliminating? There's a lot of fear about that, right? Is it eliminating jobs? Is it creating jobs, or do we not know yet? What do you think?
I think it's eliminating jobs, right? Most companies' market caps have grown in the last year, right? The market is doing really well, and big tech companies are growing, and OpenAI is worth $500 billion. But there are not as many jobs out there, and unemployment is high, and companies are laying people off, right? So it's not good.
How much of that is just companies right sizing, like after kind of the COVID, like insane hiring spree, versus like actual structural, because AI is starting to eliminate roles, do things that, one person can do maybe the job of 3 or 4 people, right? With
Sure.
right, if they're AI enabled. What do you think?
I think it's a mix. I mean, I think there's definitely like still bloat that people are cutting from overhiring during the pandemic. But I think it's a mix, right? Because I think you'll see companies attribute layoffs to AI specifically, right? And so you got to take them at their word. I think some of them are doing it proactively because they actually haven't integrated AI into their work streams fully yet, but they're kind of trying to get ahead of it maybe. I also think they're using it as a forcing function. So companies saying like, hey, we're going to let people go, or we're not going to hire because you have to figure out how to use AI to ship product or do whatever you do, commercialize, et cetera, right? So I think it's a mix of both.
Any advice to our viewers on AI adoption? Like what should, personally or company-wide scale? Any words of wisdom here?
Well, so one thing I would like to say is the people that are running the companies, the visionaries, the product people that are shipping product, they need to think about enablement. A lot of companies just don't think about it. They expect people to learn through osmosis, and that's not scalable, and it's not working, right? So I think people need to think about structured enablement more, especially in the age of AI. Otherwise, people are going to fall behind. So that would be one like piece of advice, and that could be, again, you could hire somebody in-house to do it. You could use a company like us to do it, but you have to do it in a structured way. And then the other thing I'd say is a cultural shift, right? Like, first of all, leaders have to lead by example. They have to use the tools. They have to figure out how to like show people that they are using it. And then they have to like, one thing I posted recently on social media was like, they have to make sure IT and legal teams are not in the way, and compliance teams, of using the tools. That's a big bottleneck too right now. So couple pieces of advice.
That's also, Shiv. Thanks so much for coming by. As always, appreciate your insights. Enjoy the rest of AdWeek.
Thank you.
We've got Karsten Weide from W Media Research with us. Karsten, it's great to see you. See each other at all these events, becoming a nice habit. Maybe you could start by telling our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm running a little research boutique, W Media Research, and we cover advertising technology, the business of advertising technology. And most of the stuff we do is custom research, custom go-to-market, advisory.
Awesome. Well, one topic that I know you've written about a lot recently, I saw you had a great write-up in Marketecture the other day on it, is about AI search and how that's changing the way people look for things. It's changing the way that people look at search results. It's certainly impacting the amount of traffic going back to publishers, and it's impacting their monetization in a meaningful way. Love if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what I've been looking at is the impact of AI search and chatbots on user behavior. So what we see is that a lot of users switch from traditional search to AI overviews in search or chatbots altogether. And the problem with that is that the AI-based search results or chatbot messages are they give you the complete research. You don't have to go out anymore and click like 5 of the 10 blue links to find what you're looking for. Instead, you already have the result right there in front of you, which means you don't have to go anywhere else anymore. And the result of that is that traffic for independent publishers primarily is going down quite dramatically.
How dramatically?
So there's a ton of numbers all over the place anecdotally. And what I did recently was pulled it all together and just to see how it falls out across the percentages. And since for most publishers, they lose like 30 or 40% of their traffic, which then means they lose 30 or 40% of their advertising revenue. And for many publishers, that's a very serious revenue loss.
Are CPMs staying consistent, or are they starting to drop? Are they going up? There's fewer auctions.
I haven't heard anything about that, but I would expect them to go down just because there's less demand. And so it is not only a problem for the publishers, it's also a problem for the vendors downstream, because they facilitate the advertising that the publishers are running on their sites or apps. And if there's less advertising, then they make less money too. So for both of these, publishers as well as vendors, they have to look for diversification. They have to branch out into other stuff.
Is the open web in trouble?
Possibly yes. Possibly yes. What worries me the most is the fact that traditionals, despite all the hoo-ha about AI, it's so fantastic and everybody's using AI, traditional search is still 30 times the traffic, or more than 30 times the traffic of the chatbots. And yet, even though chatbot traffic is tiny compared to search, already we see these losses in revenue or traffic on the publisher websites. What's going to happen if even more users adopt chatbots and AI-based search? Then you're going to see even more dramatic traffic loss on the publisher end.
30 to 40% drop that's a lot.
That's a lot. But there's cases where, there's smaller sites. There's this one travel site out of Australia, 90% traffic loss. They just have to shut down, right? It's impossible to make up for it.
What are you telling them, publishers? Like what advice are you giving them? You mentioned diversification.
They have to diversify. Subscription is definitely at the top of the list. I've talked to a big publisher today, and they say, by Christmas, 90% of our users will be subscribed, and they just can't make ends meet anymore. So it's a pretty dramatic situation. Event business is another one. Optimizing, producing data that AI can use and then license them out to AI. That's another path to make money. But it's going to be tough. By the way, it's also the reason why you see this whole stuff around transaction IDs, right? So used to be your publishers offer the same piece of inventory on 10 different platforms, right? 10 different exchanges, or even more.
Well, TID, you get some clarity in supply path, right?
Well, it used to be the TID, no matter where this inventory showed up, it was the same TID, which meant the buyers could compare. So they could figure out, where's the best price for the same piece of inventory across those 10 offers, right? And what publishers did was, via their pre-bid organization, which is a header bidding organization for publishers, they said, hey, we're going to change that. So now, every time the same inventory gets offered somewhere else, it's got a separate individual ID.
It doesn't sound like that incents. It almost sounds like that's incenting bad behavior, if you ask me, right? I mean,
well, you can't really blame the publishers. I mean, they're in such a desperate situation. And this makes up for 10, 15% more revenue. That's pretty good. So they're already half out of the bottom. Considering the losses you had.
But isn't it incenting the publishers are getting an outsized share of, let's say, monetization because they're gaming the system a little bit by, you don't think so?
They're struggling so much already, which is not in their business interest, and it's not in our interest either. Because if there's no independent publishers, then we don't get independent news, we don't get independent entertainment, we don't get connectivity with other people.
We don't get democracy either, right? At some point, right?
There's political implications, correct. The Republic needs open debate, open, discourse. And if there's no independent publishers anymore, it's not a good thing.
This is super interesting, and there's a lot to unpack. Thank you for your time. This is great.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So my name is Ethan Steininger. I'm the founder and CEO of Mixpeek. We are a multimodal AI infrastructure platform. And so what that means is we give developers the ability to combine unstructured data in various ways that are newly possible. So developers use us for contextual targeting, brand safety, and creative attribution.
Fantastic. Subject of taxonomy or taxonomies, could you maybe tell our viewers a little bit about it? What is it? Why is it important?
Yeah, so taxonomies at its core are kind of hierarchical mappings of relationships. And so we think of taxonomies in the context of content taxonomies, which is really, let's say you have a video and that video contains certain subjects. If we're able to map the different subjects in the video down to the timestamp, then we can do better targeting. We can ensure that those concepts don't appear next to other concepts. So for example, if tobacco is a flagged concept, it's really hard to identify, hey, those leaves in the corner of that video is tobacco. And so this is what granular taxonomies really enable in the ad ecosystem.
And you guys are doing some work with the IAB on this content taxonomization. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing, what that looks like, and what the kind of end results will be as you roll some of these frameworks and approaches out to the larger market?
Yeah, so IAB actually goes through a number of versions of taxonomies over time. So there is a whole swath of customers that are using IAB taxonomy 2.0. They have their own taxonomies. And so there's a concerted effort to consolidate these taxonomies into what is now 3.1. And so we're working actually on a taxonomy mapper that takes previous versions and combines them together in order to adhere to the new 3.1 standard. And what 3.1 enables is just more granularity. And so if you think about like contextual targeting, brand safety, all of these fields, the value is in the granularity of the targeting. And so if everybody speaks the same language, then you can ensure that everything is placed next to what you want it to be placed next to.
Erez Levin, he's a good friend and well-known commentator on many subjects. Erez, love if you could tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I think what's sort of relevant here is I've been in space a long time. I was at Google for a very long time, sitting sort of in between really the intersection of supply and demand, both on the supply side and on the demand side. And I really saw a lot of changes over many years in the industry, things that I thought were not really healthy for the ecosystem. I tried to fix many. I was successful fixing some, and some I fell short. And so now I'm trying to fix those things from the outside as a consultant, helping different companies focused on those solutions.
Erez, you've been a very vocal critic of the term outcomes era. Love if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I've seen the sort of the gamification of this industry. Generally speaking, I think it's ultimately because buyers took their eyes off the ball of how marketing effectiveness should be measured. And ultimately, I think what sort of paved the way for that is buyers' reliance on vague terms that sound good on paper, but in reality translate into something that is not really tied to effectiveness. And so outcomes, more often than not, while we think they're business objectives and KPIs, but more often than not, they end up meaning something that is really a vanity metric. So something like attribution that isn't actually incremental, or maybe even worse than that, vanity metrics viewability and completed views that are completely detached from actual effectiveness. And so I think that we've been in this outcomes era for a very long time, pushing towards those vanity metrics. And what I'm very adamant about is that we have to now pivot and transition away from outcomes, or at least away from terms that are so sort of dual meaning, and that even though some people up high really do mean the good and nice and noble interpretation, generally on the ground that gets translated into something that is just easy to do and achieve and doesn't actually tie to effectiveness.
And that leads us to our next question, is that you've talked a lot about quality era of advertising. Like, we're entering this quality era, and that seems to be thematically related to what you just discussed around outcomes and what this really means. And how would you define that? What are your talking points around quality advertising or the quality era?
Yeah. So I think ultimately most marketing effectiveness is actually determined, historically and even through the digital era. It's based on how often you reach a customer, and the impact that can be measured over the short and the long term. That reach was usually actually quality adjusted in the past, but in the digital era that got a little bit disconnected, and we only looked at quantity. We looked at these vanity metrics and then how many you got, and then tying it to some sort of outcome, which often wasn't incremental. And so the idea of quality, it's a subjective term, right? It's really big, but ultimately it's thinking about the relative value of media. Not all impressions, not all reach, not all media is equal. And so how do we define the relative value of media according to different criteria, whether it's the time of day or the geo or how prominent the ad is on a page, is it large or small, pay different amounts for that. And I think ultimately that's the ingredient that helps drive the real effectiveness and the real business outcomes that we care about.
And Thiel, and if you could maybe tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your background, that'd be amazing. Welcome.
You got it. Thank you for having me. My name's Ann Thiel. I lead advertising and revenue operations for Cox Automotive. What that means is that I have agency and publishers on my team. So I lead the publisher side for ad operations for AutoTrader and Kelley Blue Book, and I lead the agency side for dealer.com. I just finished a panel and we were talking about how all of the tech stacks work together. Agentic AI is I know it's the buzzword this week, probably all around.
I've heard a lot of it.
Agentic AI, I am rebranding in my own department as the Great Connector. So in my department, we have two separate tech stacks. We want to be able to utilize the teams across both publisher and agency. We want to make sure that we're using all of the tech in the right way. We want to make sure that we're using our audiences in the right way. And with agentic AI at the enterprise level, we will be able to connect everything from the tech stacks, and that's both, right? So there's two of them. We'll be able to do that. And we will be able to utilize, like our media buying team, we'll be able to utilize them across all of the different tiers. So the OEM agencies all the way down to the brick and mortar dealers. We'll be able to connect all of that impression inventory, AutoTrader, Kelley Blue Book, our Cox DSP through from Fluency, dealer.com. We'll be able to do all of that, and we'll have media planning tier 1 to tier 3.
It sounds like a really amazing, bold vision. But at an enterprise, it must be challenging. What are some things you've been running into, like some maybe potential pitfalls or just things that have been tough that you'd like to tell other people about if they're going to go through similar journeys?
Thank you. Great question. It is very important, number one, to pick out the pain points in the process. So when you're getting all the way down to the very tactical level of the folks who are doing the media buying or doing the trafficking on the teams, you need to understand what are those repetitive processes that they're doing that are taking the time. Automate those first. Maybe your agentic solution can also do some automation. We have already gone through the painstaking process of automating like a lot of the workflows. So it's easier for us to implement the enterprise agentic solution. So that's where I would start. If people like, if you haven't done that yet, you need to look at ways to automate processes first before sort of implementing that agent that will be actually performing the processes for you.
Do you think it's this, let's say, agentic workflows or agentic AI? I mean, how is it going to change the experience for like business users as they use software? Do you think it's going to be completely different in a couple of years?
I do, actually. I think that I think operations teams are going to look a lot different. I think salespeople are going to be able to have campaign data and selling points at their fingertips when they're sitting in front of a client. They're going to be connected, through the agent to all of our systems. They're going to be able to say, oh, we do have 1 million impressions for you available on the homepage of AutoTrader next month if you would like that. That's a very non-complex, right? Answer and example there. So for sellers, having all of that information at their fingertips, they won't have to go back and put in a Salesforce request and get the impression inventory. And that takes weeks. I think for sellers to be able to have that information readily available when they're sitting in front of a client is going to be game changing.
Sounds amazing. And I'm sure we could talk about this for hours. This is really interesting. I don't want to take any more of your time, but thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Bob Walczak, who's the CEO of MadConnect. Bob, great to have you here. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Good to be here. My name is Bob Walczak. I am the founder of MadConnect. We are a intelligent connectivity layer for the MarTech and AdTech industry. I've been in this space for north of 25 years at this point. As a CEO now 3 times, a GM twice, and a head of product twice.
This is a really cool topic, and it's you just said it a second ago, ICL or Intelligent Connectivity Layer. Love if you could tell us what this is, why it's important.
Yeah, we built an API connectivity hub originally because the market was moving from third-party to first-party data. We thought there was a need for greater connectivity between the platforms you license to build your MarTech and AdTech stack. Ultimately, with AI, it has evolved into an intelligent connectivity layer, as we see that's a foundational layer to connect all the platforms that companies and their users are using today to be able to perform their various tasks and functions. And now with AI, you can build that and automate that through API connectivity.
And we talked about how this connects to basically every ad tech and MarTech platform that a company is, whether it's a publisher, an agency, a brand, is currently managing in their sort of total stack. Right? Could be warehouses, could be DSPs, etc. How do you ensure that, it seems like it's a critical component to making all this stuff work together, sort of this underlying data logic and connectivity between all of this stuff, because that's often where the fragmentation is within a brand, and they have problems kind of getting their data house in order. How do you guys, how are you seeing this come to life and with clients? Are you seeing some of these prototypes get out and tested in market?
Yeah, look, we think that the average enterprise right now is licensing somewhere between 80 to 120 different platforms to build out their MarTech and AdTech stack. Each one of those platforms has a private pool of data in there for the enterprise for its various function, whether it's for activation or measurement or reporting or enrichment, profile generation. So, those platforms have to be connected. And what the ICL capability is, essentially, it's a large switchboard to plug all your systems into and all their APIs. And then, allow that to be able to run the various use cases that a human would run logging into those systems. But instead of that, you'd be able to have an LLM or an agent that you develop, run your automation for, audience enrichment, audience activation, reporting, optimization, all the various functions that an agency, a brand, a publisher, a platform are doing today. From a human standpoint, now can be done with an LLM by plugging into the ICL.
That's awesome, Bob. Love it. Thanks for the explanation, and enjoy the rest of AdWeek.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hi, this is Longacre. Here are my key takeaways from what I've seen today as I've been walking around, spending time with people. Number one, really busy event. I think I read earlier today, 20,000 attendees overall. It's a big number, and you could tell I got here this morning and the line wrapped quite literally around the building, and took me about half hour to get in, and luckily I saw Kenny Paul from Chalice. I was walking down, and then we ran to Kendra Barnett, and so it was good to run into two friendly faces there. And we ended up getting in. Two other key themes. Number one was a lot of talk today about AI and data governance and responsibility, especially copy art. I think it's important as we look at, as AI evolves, as more agencies and marketers adopt it. What frameworks are we using to understand, is data consented? Should we be using it? Is it, if we're using models, is the data copyrighted? A lot of talk about that today. And the other talk, and I thought this is actually the biggest one of the day, was about creators and the creator economy. Believe it or not, there was 150 different creators presenting today during AdWeek. So pretty cool. This shows how far this has come. The premium value organizations are putting on the creator economy and the fact that creators are creating amazing content. So I think it really speaks volumes that there was such an emphasis on it. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. Those are my key themes for today. Thanks very much for listening in.